The fluorescent lights of Murphy's diner flickered at exactly 2:47 a.m., casting shadows across the worn linoleum floor where Sarah Chen had just dropped a tray of dishes. Her hands were shaking, not from the crash, but from the eviction notice crumpled in her apron pocket. 3 days. That's all she had left before her daughter would be sleeping in their car. Again. She didn't notice the elderly man in the wheelchair by the window, or how his trembling hands couldn't quite manage the fork, or how the soup in front of him had gone cold while he struggled in dignified silence. Sarah was too busy calculating whether her tips tonight would cover both the electricity bill and her daughter's asthma medication. The answer, as always, was no. But then their eyes met across that tired diner, and something shifted in the universe. A moment so small it could have been missed, yet so profound it would change everything. Sarah watched the old man's hand shake violently as he tried once more to lift the spoon to his lips. Soup splattered across the table, his face flushed with embarrassment as a younger man in an expensive suit sitting across from him sighed heavily, checking his phone with barely concealed impatience. The old man whispered something, but the younger man waved him off, absorbed in his screen. Without thinking, Sarah grabbed a clean towel and walked over. "Sir, would you mind if I helped?" she asked softly, kneeling beside the wheelchair so she was at eye level with him. The old man's cloudy eyes filled with tears. "I don't want to be a burden," he whispered. "You're not a burden," Sarah said firmly, gently taking the spoon. "My grandmother had Parkinson's too. Let me help, please." For the next 20 minutes, Sarah fed him slowly, patiently, wiping his chin with care after each spoonful. She told him about her daughter Emma, how she loved to draw pictures of astronauts, even though they couldn't afford art supplies. The old man smiled, really smiled for the first time that evening. She asked about his life, and he told her about his late wife, about the restaurant he'd built from nothing 50 years ago, about grandchildren he rarely saw anymore. The man in the suit barely looked up from his phone the entire time. When the meal was finished, Sarah squeezed the old man's hand. "You take care of yourself, okay?" "What's your name, Angel?" he asked, his voice breaking. "Sarah, just Sarah." "Thank you, just Sarah," he said, and she saw something in his eyes she couldn't quite name. Recognition, perhaps, or remembrance of a kindness long forgotten in his world. She went back to her section, back to pouring coffee and forcing smiles for customers who didn't tip. Back to the grinding reality of her life. She didn't see the old man arguing with the younger man as they left, or how he kept turning back to look at her through the diner window. 3 days later, Sarah was packing their meager belongings into garbage bags when Emma came running in from school. "Mommy, there's a man at the door. He has a briefcase." Sarah's heart sank. "A lawyer probably here to make the eviction official." She opened the door to find an impeccably dressed man holding a folder. "Ms. Sarah Chen? I'm Robert Morrison, attorney for the Ashford family. May I come in?" The Ashford family. The name meant nothing to her. She let him in anyway, mainly because Emma was watching with wide, curious eyes, and Sarah didn't want her daughter to see her fall apart. "I'll get straight to the point," the lawyer said, settling onto their worn couch. "4 days ago, you showed kindness to Mr. Thomas Ashford at Murphy's Diner. Mr. Ashford is a client of mine, and he's asked me to deliver this to you personally." He handed her an envelope. Inside was a check that made Sarah's knees buckle. $50,000. "There must be some mistake," she whispered. "No mistake. But there's more." The lawyer pulled out documents from his briefcase. "Mr. Ashford has established a trust fund for your daughter's education. Full ride through college, any school she gets into. He's also paid your rent for the next 2 years and arranged for a management position at one of the Ashford restaurant chains, should you choose to accept it. Full benefits, including health care." Sarah couldn't breathe. "I don't understand. I just helped him eat dinner." "Ms. Chen, do you know who Thomas Ashford is?" She shook her head. "He's the founder of Ashford Hospitality Group. 73 restaurants across the country, worth approximately $1.2 billion. The lawyer paused, his professional demeanor softening. "He's also a father who watched his own son ignore him that night. while he struggled to eat a simple meal. That son, Marcus Ashford, was supposed to be taking care of him. Instead, Marcus spent the dinner on his phone, managing hostile takeover negotiations, treating his father like an inconvenient obligation. Sarah remembered the younger man in the suit, his impatience, his indifference. "Mr. Ashford's Parkinson's has progressed rapidly," the lawyer continued. "He knows he doesn't have much time left. That night at the diner, he told me he couldn't remember the last time someone looked at him like he was human, not just a dying old man or a pile of money to inherit. You gave him dignity. You gave him 20 minutes of feeling like he mattered." Tears streamed down Sarah's face. "He did matter. He does matter. He knows that now because of you." The lawyer stood, handing her his card. "The job offer stands whenever you're ready. Mr. Ashford asked me to tell you something else. He said to tell you that 50 years ago, when he had nothing, a waitress named Betty helped him when he couldn't afford to pay for his meal. She told him to pay it forward someday. He became so focused on building his empire that he forgot, until you reminded him." After the lawyer left, Sarah held Emma tight, breathing in the scent of her daughter's hair, not quite believing this was real. The job turned out to be real. The trust fund was real. The rent payment was real. But more than that, the opportunity was real. A chance to build something, to finally climb out of the hole poverty had dug around them. Sarah started as a floor manager at Ashford's downtown location 3 weeks later. She was terrified at first, convinced she'd mess it up somehow, that this fairy tale would evaporate. But Thomas Ashford had insisted on mentoring her personally, despite his declining health. He taught her everything about running a restaurant, about leadership, about seeing employees as human beings first and workers second. "You already know the most important part," he told her during one of their meetings, his words slurred but his eyes sharp. "You know how to care. Everything else can be taught." 6 months into her new position, Sarah was called to Thomas Ashford's estate. He was in hospice now, the Parkinson's having stolen everything but his mind. Marcus, his son, stood in the corner of the room, looking uncomfortable and out of place. "Sarah," Thomas whispered, and she took his shaking hand. "I need to tell you something." "Save your strength," she said softly. "No, listen." He squeezed her hand with what little strength he had left. "I'm changing my will. The business goes to a trust, managed by people who understand what hospitality really means. People like you. Marcus will receive a comfortable inheritance, but he won't control the company. Not until he learns what you knew instinctively in that diner, that every person matters." Marcus started to protest, but Thomas cut him off with a look that held decades of disappointment. "Son, I gave you everything. Money, education, opportunity. But I failed to teach you the only thing that truly matters, how to see people. Really see them. Sarah saw me, a complete stranger who took 20 minutes to make an old man feel human again." He turned back to Sarah. "I'm making you vice president of operations. You'll work with the board, learn from them, and someday, when you're ready, maybe you'll run this whole thing. You've got something money can't buy, a good heart and the courage to act on it." Thomas Ashford died 3 days later, surrounded by family who had suddenly remembered he existed, now that his will had been read. But Sarah and Emma were there too, holding his other hand, telling him stories and making sure he knew he wasn't alone. The funeral was massive. Politicians, celebrities, business moguls. But Sarah noticed Marcus standing apart from everyone, staring at his father's casket, with something that looked like regret etched into his features. She walked over to him. "He loved you, you know. He told me that. He just wanted you to slow down long enough to see the world beyond the bottom line." Marcus looked at her, this waitress who'd inherited his birthright, and for a moment she thought he might lash out. Instead, his shoulders sagged. "I was closing a $40 million deal that night at the diner. I thought it was important. I thought everything I was doing was important." He laughed bitterly. He struggled to eat soup, and I couldn't put down my phone. "What kind of son does that?" "The kind who can still learn," Sarah said quietly. "The kind who still has time to change." 2 years later, Sarah was indeed running Ashford Hospitality Group as CEO. making headlines as the former waitress who'd revolutionized the company culture. She'd implemented policies ensuring living wages, healthcare for all employees, and tuition reimbursement programs. Profits had actually increased. Turned out people worked harder when they were treated like human beings. Marcus had taken a position as a floor manager at one of the restaurants, starting from the bottom, learning the business the way his father had originally built it. He called Sarah sometimes, asking for advice, slowly rebuilding himself into someone his father might have been proud of. Emma, now thriving in a private school, with art classes and a scholarship, locked in for whatever college she chose, asked her mother one night why she'd helped that old man in the diner. Sarah thought about it for a long moment. "Baby, I didn't help him because I knew he was rich. I didn't help him expecting anything in return. I helped him because he needed help and I could give it. That's all it ever has to be. We're all just people trying to get through this life. The least we can do is make it a little easier for each other. Is that why you let Mr. Marcus work for you even though he was mean to his dad? People deserve second chances. Emma, your grandfather Ashford gave me one when he decided to help us. I'm just paying it forward, like someone did for him a long time ago. Sometimes late at night in her new apartment. Nothing fancy, but clean and safe and theirs." Sarah thinks about that moment in the diner. How close she came to walking past that old man. How tired she was. How consumed by her own problems. What if she'd been too wrapped up in her own struggle to see his? What if she'd decided that 20 minutes was too much to spare? But she hadn't. And that split-second decision to choose kindness over convenience, humanity over hurry, had changed everything. Not because of the money, though the financial security meant Emma would never know the gnawing fear of homelessness. Not because of the career, though Sarah loved the work and the purpose it gave her. It changed everything because it reminded her, and everyone who heard the story afterward, that we're all one moment away from either giving or receiving grace. That billionaires die alone when their children can't see past dollar signs. That waitresses can become CEOs when someone believes in them. That 20 minutes of genuine human kindness can echo across years, across lives, across the barriers we build between ourselves. Thomas Ashford's final interview, given weeks before his death, was played at the company's annual meeting. His words, though slurred and difficult, were clear in meaning. "I built an empire, but I almost forgot why." Restaurants aren't about food. They're about people coming together, breaking bread, being human. Sarah reminded me of that. She didn't see a billionaire. She saw a man who needed help. That's the business we're really in, helping people. Everything else is just details. Sarah keeps a photo on her desk, not of Thomas Ashford, but of her grandmother, the one who also had Parkinson's, the one who taught her that everyone deserves dignity. Next to it is a drawing Emma made, an astronaut reaching down to help another astronaut who's fallen on the moon. "We can't make it alone," Emma had written at the bottom in her careful child's handwriting. No, Sarah thinks, looking out over the city from her office window. We really can't. And thank God we don't have to